Welcome to our second lesson in our Python series. In today's lesson, we're looking at inputs, arithmetic operators, and type conversion. Let's get into it. So to begin, we're going to close off any previous lessons that we've had, and we're going to make a new Python file, and we're going to call it lesson 2 or O2. Okay. Now the first thing we're going to do today is we're going to look at inputs and how the user can input the data into Python. And it's quite easy in terms of the syntax. Now that word syntax may come up a little bit. That just means how we go about writing our code. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new variable, and this one I'm going to call age. So age, and then I'm going to say is equal to. Now, in the last video, we did something like this, is equal to 16. But we're setting that for the user. We want the user to actually put that in themselves. So what we can do is we can just write input, input, and then we do some brackets and we say, what is your age? Question mark. Okay, so the only thing we've done different here is we've added this input command at the front, and then we've put in a question for the user. So when I go and run this, and remember I like to right click and run like so, it says, what is your age? If you clicked run over here and it says lesson 1 here, it's obviously going to run the wrong one. So that's why I like right clicking here and clicking run. So it now prompts us and says, what is your age? Now, whatever the user inputs here, it's going to set it to age. So if the user says, 100, it's going to set that to age. Now, we haven't put anything after there, so the code just ends. But if we were to say enter and print age, now I did a capital, it has to be lowercase, print age, and run that again. Now, what is your age? And if I write 90, you can see it comes up with 90. Now, some of you may have already noticed and said something. Technically, what I'm doing here is I'm asking the user to enter a string and not an integer, because I haven't set it to anything, so it's going to assume this is text. So even though it comes up with 90 down here, it's actually a string. And we can do some type conversion here, and we can just say, this is definitely going to be an integer. So how we do that is we write int in front of the input, put a bracket, and then another bracket at the end. And now what we're doing is we're saying to the computer, look, I promise you the user is going to put an integer into here. So let's run it again. And now this time if I write 60, it looks very similar. But the difference is if I'm to run it again and I was to write an age, you ready? I get an error. It says, hey, you promised me that there was an integer coming into here and you didn't deliver on that promise. And so now we've got an issue with that, and we've got what's called a traceback error, or in computer science, it's known as a runtime error. It has crashed our code. Now, if I was to remove this int and just run it like so, and run it again, and now I enter John, well, there's no issue there at all. It's happy with that. And that's because I didn't make a promise that that would be an integer. But we're going to keep that promise in there because we do want that to be an integer. So we've asked the user now to enter their age. Let's go and ask them to enter their name. So we might do that first. We'll say name equals input. What is your name? Question mark. All right. And let's go ahead and do another one. Let's go with height again. Height equals, and now this time we're doing a float. So a float is just a decimal, meaning instead of an integer having nothing after it, we now have a decimal point. So I'm going to write float and input. I'm going to say, what is your height? All right. And I might just copy and paste this at the bottom twice. Change the first one to name, it needs to be lowercase, and change the last one to height. Perfect. Now if I do go too fast at any point during the video, just pause it, rewind it, and find the spot that I went too fast in. You can also play spot the difference with my code if yours is crashing. It's very easy, I know, to do something like this. Put a capital H and you'll see the red lines appear and you might think, what's gone wrong? And you've just done something simple like put a capital in instead of a lowercase. All right, let's run this and make sure it works. So what is your name? My name is Billy. My age is 20 and my height is 5'2". Hey, and there you go. It printed them all out. Now we haven't done any arithmetic operations with it yet, so it just comes out the exact same, the same as what the user put in. But that's how we can input from a user, and we can also dictate the type that we're trying to get from the user. Now let's go ahead and let's do something cool. Let's do some operators here. So some real easy ones, as we could say age times, well, we might not mess with the user here actually. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to delete all of this, and we're going to do just a simple calculator for a cat. Now, cats are 7 times human years in age, meaning if a cat is 1 in human years, it's 1 in cat years, it's 7 in human years. So what we're going to say is we're going to say cat age equals int input please enter your cat's age in human years. Okay, and I might just give a bit of space here. I might say cat name equals input enter your cat name. I've ignored the please there, I'm not sure why. And then that's probably all we need. We're going to now do some operators on here. So we know that the maths behind it is times 7. So we're going to say cat age equals cat age times 7. Now underneath, I know it's going to cause a bit of an error, but I'm going to do the maths there just so you can see. So if cat age is equal to 1, it's going to say 1 is equal to 1 times 7. And you can see the way I got that times is by holding shift and pushing 8. So cat age is equal to 1, or 1 equals 1 times 7. Now if I entered in 3, it would say 3 is equal to 3 equals 3 times 7. So you can see whatever's there, we're just going to use over there. Okay? So let's delete that out. To test this, I'm going to go print cat h above that line of code, and then I'm also going to go print cat age below that line of code. So let me run that now. If I go run and enter your cat name, Fluffy, and he is 3. So it says Fluffy is 21, and you can see I got a 3 there because I printed before it, and then I got a 21 after it. So that's how we do multiplication. What if we wanted to do it the other way around? So I'm going to remove that one because we know that works. If I said please enter your cat's age in cat years, well, that would be divided by 7 then, because if they were 7, that'd only be 1 in human years. So let's run this again, and you can see the divide symbol is the one that's next to the shift key on the right of your keyboard, just above question mark. So if I run that, how old is your cat? My cat is 21. Oh, enter the wrong one, 21. Okay, and it says your cat is 3. Now a couple of things to take note here. I can enter an integer into a string because this is essentially what it does. It will put quotes around the string like that. So it's just putting the text within there. It does mean though, excuse me, if I try and do any maths with that, it's going to cause an issue, which I'll show you in a minute. The second thing to note is it converted it to a float. And you can see I told it was an integer, but integers don't have a decimal point at the end. But it went ahead and was smart, and it said, you know what, I think I know what you want, and I'm going to make it that. And the reason it did that is if I said the cat, what's the cat name again, whatever, and I said the cat was 22, it needs to give me the decimals on the end of that. So that's why it converted it to a float instead of an integer. All right, we're going to make this crash, and this will be the last thing we do in the video. This is why it's important that you set the right data types. I'm going to remove this integer. And let's say I got lazy and I just left it as a string. And you saw I entered a 21 in there before, it worked fine. Let's try enter a string into here and see what happens when we try to divide a string by 7. So if I run this, what is your cat name? And we're going to call him Crash. So Crash, that's his name. And how old is he in cat years? Well, he's only 7, he's 1 year old. Crash. And why did it crash? It said, hey, you're trying to do some sort of maths between a string and an integer. And we don't like that. And because you tried to do that, well, we don't know what to do, so we're going to crash. And it actually says here, it's at line 7. That's where the issue is. So at line 7, we crashed. But we know, really, the issue was up here. And I'm going to make it a float because it does it anyway. If we just convert it back to a float and run it, then now, what is your cat name? He is now not Crash. And let's enter, he is 28 years old, and he comes out to be 4 years old in human years. So, perfect. We've now done inputs. We've done some arithmetic operators, and we've seen how you can force something to be a specific data type in order for it to not crash and for it to be easier for you. So that's the end of this lesson. In our next lesson, we're going to be looking at if statements. And if statements are really powerful because they can kind of control our data and sort of send it one way or the other depending on where we want it to go. So that's what we're looking at in our next video. See you then.